I still remember how the shouting started that night. It wasn't like the usual fights. No, this was different. The kind of shouting that makes your chest tighten. They were outside, under that big mango tree near the hostel. The one that stood tall like a witness to everything we tried to hide. And the words, they came out like they'd been held back for too long. Furious, sharp, heavy with things that should have been said months ago. But let me start from the beginning. I'm busy, just a third-year economics student at the University of Ibadan. If you've been to a Nigerian university, you know the drill: endless lectures, the smell of roadside suya, and the occasional water crisis. But mostly, it's the people who make it what it is. That's where Yemi and Funke come in. Yemi was the guy every girl whispered about. Tall, dark, and confident, but not in a flashy way. He had this laugh that made people want to laugh with him. And Funke, she was like light, always smiling, even on days when nothing seemed worth smiling about. They met during our second year. It wasn't anything fancy, just one of those random nights when people gathered under the dim hostel lights, talking about lecturers and bad network. She asked him for hot water. He teased her for not knowing how to light a stove. By the next week they were inseparable. You could always spot them, Yemi in his plain white t-shirt, Funke in her colorful Ankara skirts. Some days they'd sit under the mango tree, whispering and laughing like the world was theirs. Other days they argued like they were the only two people who mattered. We all saw it. The way they loved, loud and imperfect. But we also saw the cracks. It started small. Yemi hated when Funke stayed out late with her friends. He never said it directly, but you could see it. The way his mood shifted. The sharp way he'd ask, "Where were you?" Even when she gave the most harmless answers. Funke, on the other hand, had this habit of brushing things off. She'd laugh and say, "Yemi likes to worry too much." And maybe that's what we all believed too. But things changed. There was this party one Friday night. Everyone was there, loud music, red plastic cups, and the smell of fried plantain in the air. Yemi wasn't much of a party guy, but Funke loved them. And that night, she danced. Not with Yemi, with a guy the first they didn't recognize. Hands on her waist, her head thrown back in laughter. Yemi saw it. I saw it too. After that night, the air around them shifted. Yemi became quieter. Funke tried to pretend nothing was wrong, but we all noticed how she checked her phone a little too often. There were no more laughter-filled walks from class. No more stolen kisses under the mango tree. Just silence. And then the rumors started. People said Yemi was seen with some girl from the Faculty of Law. Others whispered that Funke had a friend who dropped her off at the hostel in a shiny black car. I didn't know what to believe, but I knew it was only a matter of time. That night, the one I can't forget, it was the mango tree again. I was returning from a late-night study session. The air was heavy with the smell of rain, and the hostel corridor was mostly empty. But as I got closer, I heard them. Yemi's voice, low and rough. "You think I don't know?" And Funke's, shaky, but still trying to hold her ground. "You don't trust me, Yemi. You never have." I didn't want to listen. But their words clung to the night, impossible to ignore. "I saw the way you looked at him," Yemi spat. "At the party. Like I wasn't even there." "And what about you?" Funke shot back. "That girl, everyone knows, Yemi. Everyone talks." He stepped closer. I could see the tension in the way his hands curled into fists. But he didn't raise them. He never did. "I loved you," he said. Just that. Quiet and broken. And Funke, she didn't say anything. Just turned away, tears running down her face. That was the last time I saw them together. Funke stopped coming to class for a while. When she did return, the light in her eyes was dimmer. Yemi. He acted like nothing happened, but you could tell. The smiles didn't reach his eyes. People moved on, like they always do. But the mango tree stayed. Sometimes, when I pass by, I wonder if it remembers. The laughter, the whispers, the shouting, and I think about how love, the kind we all crave, can sometimes turn into something else. Something that leaves you standing under a mango tree, wishing you could forget. University life moved on like it always did. Test schedules, late-night assignments, and the occasional hostel drama. But for Yemi and Funke, things weren't the same. Funke stopped sitting in her usual spot in the lecture hall. She moved a few rows back, far from where Yemi always sat. And Yemi, he showed up less and less. People whispered that he was dealing with stuff. Some said he was drinking more. Others claimed he'd started missing classes. But no one really knew. Not even me. I tried asking Funke once. We were at the cafeteria, sharing a table because every other seat was full. I could see how tired she looked, like someone who had forgotten how to sleep. "How are you?" I asked, like the words weren't completely useless. She forced a smile. "Fine." That's the thing about people like Funke. They get good at pretending. It wasn't until a few weeks later that I saw Yemi again. It was a Friday night, and the campus was buzzing. The student bar, a small shack with wobbly plastic chairs, was packed. Someone was celebrating a birthday, and the music was loud enough to shake the walls. I didn't go inside. I just saw him through the open doorway. Yemi was at a corner table, a half-empty bottle of gin in front of him. His usual crisp white t-shirt was wrinkled, and his eyes were bloodshot. There was a girl next to him, one of those flashy types who always knew where the party was. She laughed too loudly, and Yemi leaned closer like she was the only thing that mattered. But I saw it. Even as he laughed, even as he downed another drink, his eyes were somewhere else. Maybe back under the mango tree. Maybe with Funke. I didn't say anything. Just walked away. You think stories like this have some grand, dramatic ending? Like one final blowout that makes everything clear. But that's not how it happened. It was gradual. Funke withdrew. She skipped group discussions, ignored messages, and spent most of her time locked in her room. Yemi stopped pretending to. He was barely seen on campus. Some people said he'd been suspended for missing too many classes. Others claimed he'd dropped out. The mango tree stood empty. No laughter, no whispers, just silence. And me, I tried to forget. But forgetting isn't easy when you've seen love turn into something unrecognizable. Months passed. Funke started to seem like herself again. She smiled a little more, showed up to class, and even joined a campus fellowship. People said she was healing. Yemi, though, his name only came up in whispers. Some said he'd moved back to Lagos. Others claimed he was in therapy. I didn't know the truth. But I hoped he was finding his way. The last thing I ever heard was that Funke had changed her number. Blocked him on everything. It wasn't dramatic, just necessary. I wish I could say there's a moral to this story. Something profound like, love always wins, or people change. But I don't know if that's true. What I do know is that sometimes, the people we love aren't good for us. Not because they are evil, but because they are hurting too. And when two hurting people try to hold on to something that's already cracked, it breaks. Yemi and Funke, they were never the villains. They were just two people who loved each other the only way they knew how. And sometimes, that's not enough. The mango tree is still there. It doesn't remember the laughter or the fights. It doesn't whisper secrets or hold grudges. It just stands. And maybe that's all we can do too. Just stand and keep going. Months turned into a year. The campus was the same: crowded lecture halls, street vendors selling puff-puff and akara, and the occasional gossip that spread like wildfire. But Funke and Yemi became stories people told in passing. Remember Yemi and Funke? Oh, those two. What a mess. No one ever gets the full story. They just pick the pieces that sound the most dramatic. But I kept thinking about the moments that didn't make it into the gossip. The way Yemi's eyes softened whenever Funke laughed. How Funke would wait outside his class just to walk with him. The inside jokes. The silent apologies. The dreams they whispered to each other under the mango tree. No one talks about those parts. It was during our final year that I saw Yemi again. I was at a small bookstore just outside campus, the kind that sold second-hand novels and outdated textbooks. The air smelled of paper and dust. I was scanning the shelves when I heard a voice behind me. Bessie. I turned and there he was. He looked different. Not in a bad way. Just quieter. His white t-shirt was gone, replaced by a plain brown button-down. His eyes didn't carry the same weight they once did. Hey, hear me, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. We stood there for a moment, like two people who weren't sure how much of the past to acknowledge. How have you been? I finally asked. He nodded. Better. It wasn't a rehearsed answer. He meant it. We didn't talk about Funke. Not directly. But as we stood in that dusty bookstore, flipping through old novels, I could feel the ghosts between us. The words left unsaid. The things neither of us knew how to ask. Before I left, he smiled. A small, tired smile. Take care of yourself, Bessie. You too, hear me. And that was it. A few months later, just before graduation, I ran into Funke. She was walking across campus, wearing a simple green dress that flowed in the breeze. She looked peaceful. Not the first kind of peace people wear like a mask, but the kind that comes when you've made it through the worst of it. Bessie, she called, waving. We hugged. It wasn't awkward, just warm. Like time had softened everything. We sat on a bench under the mango tree. I wanted to ask her about Yemi, but something told me I didn't need to. Are you happy? I asked instead. She smiled, her eyes reflecting something I couldn't quite name. I think I'm getting there. We talked about graduation plans and future dreams. She wanted to work in the NGO sector, helping girls in underserved communities. I wasn't surprised. That was just who Funke was, always finding ways to give light to others. Before we parted, she touched the rough bark of the mango tree, her fingers tracing the carved initials that had long faded. Some things are better left in the past, she said softly. I nodded, because she was right. Graduation came and went. Caps were thrown, photos were taken, and promises of "we'll keep in touch" echoed through the air. I never saw Yemi or Funke again. But sometimes, when I pass by an old tree or hear laughter in the distance, I think about them. About the way love can bloom so brightly, only to burn out just as fast. About how people can break each other without meaning to. And about how, sometimes, healing means knowing when to let go. The mango tree still stands. Its branches stretch wide, offering shade to new stories. Maybe some other lovers will find themselves beneath it. Maybe they'll whisper dreams into the wind, thinking they'll last forever. And maybe, just maybe, they'll learn that even when love doesn't last, the memory of it can. Because some stories don't need a perfect ending. They just need to be remembered. Life went on. It always does. After graduation, I moved to Lagos for my NYSC, mandatory service year every Nigerian graduate dreads and somehow survives. The city was loud and fast, a constant hum of generator, traffic, and impatient voices. I barely had time to think about university days. But every now and then, memories crept in. The mango tree, Yemi's laugh, Funke's bright smile. It's strange how people who were once so central to your life can fade into the background, like a song you used to love but don't listen to anymore. You remember the melody, but not the lyrics. Still, they were never entirely gone. It was a rainy Tuesday when I got the message. My phone buzzed just as I was squeezing through a crowded danfo, the musty air thick with the smell of wet clothes. It was from Funke. Greater than, "Hey Bissy, I hope you're doing well. I just wanted to share some news, I'm getting married." My heart skipped. Not from shock, but something else. Maybe nostalgia. Maybe joy. Greater than, "Congrats, Funke. I'm so happy for you. Who's the lucky one?" She replied almost instantly. Greater than, "His name is Tunde. We met during my internship. He's wonderful. I think you'd like him." There was no trace of bitterness in her words. No mention of Yemi, just happiness. And that told me everything I needed to know. People heal, sometimes in ways you don't expect. A year after Funke's wedding, I heard about Yemi again. Not through gossip, but through LinkedIn of all places. He had started a mental health initiative. Workshops, outreach programs, helping university students navigate the same storms he once went through. The caption under his photo read, "Greater than, healing isn't always about forgetting. Sometimes it's about making sure others don't feel alone." I stared at his face, the familiar lines of his jaw, the slight crinkle near his eyes. He looked at peace. Not the loud, boisterous Yemi I once knew, but a softer, wiser version of himself. I didn't reach out. It didn't feel necessary. Some people you carry in your heart, even if you never see them again. I went back to campus once. Not for anything special, just a random trip with friends who wanted to relive the good old days. The mango tree was still there, its branches stretching even wider than I remembered. Students laughed beneath it, sharing secrets and stolen kisses. New lovers, new stories. I traced my fingers along the back, wondering if any part of Yemi and Funke still lingered. But the tree didn't hold on to the past. It just stood, offering shade to whoever needed it. And maybe that's how it's supposed to be. Because in the end, we are all like that tree, rooted in our stories, growing despite the storms, and standing tall long after the shouting has stopped. Years passed. I built a life in Lagos, a steady job in finance, a cramped apartment with a leaky bathroom, and a circle of friends who made the city feel a little less exhausting. One Saturday, I found myself at a small cafe in Ikoyi, the kind of place where the smell of ground coffee lingered in the air. I was there for a friend's birthday brunch. Laughter filled the room, and the sound of forks clinking against plates made the space feel alive. I excused myself to get some air. And that's when I saw him. Yemi. He was standing by the window, phone in hand, the sunlight catching the side of his face. He wasn't wearing his signature white t-shirt. Instead, a navy blue polo hugged his shoulders. He looked calm, like someone who had grown into himself. I froze. For a moment, I considered slipping back inside. But before I could move, he saw me. Busy. His voice still had that familiar warmth. "Yemi," I said, a smile creeping across my face. "Wow. It's been a while." We stood there, a thousand unspoken things hanging in the air. But none of it felt heavy. Just distant. Like something we both understood without needing to say it. "How have you been?" I asked. "Good," he said with a nod. "Really good. And you?" "I'm surviving Lagos," I joked. "That counts for something, right?" He laughed, that same full, unrestrained laugh that I hadn't realized I missed. We sat outside on the small patio, the city buzzing around us. Yemi told me about his mental health workshops, how they had grown from a simple campus initiative to a full-fledged organization. It was clear he was passionate about it. I guess I learned the hard way, he said, stirring the last bit of his coffee. But if I can help even one person feel less alone, it's worth it. I nodded. That's really amazing, Yemi. He smiled, and for a moment there was a pause. I could feel the question lingering. The one we both knew was coming. Do you still talk to Funke? He shook his head, not with bitterness, just acceptance. No, she's married now. I heard she's doing well. She is, I said softly. She's happy. I'm glad. He meant it. There were no follow-up questions. No need to dissect the past. We both knew it had shaped us, but it didn't define us anymore. We parted ways that afternoon. No promises to stay in touch, no awkward goodbyes. Just a simple, genuine, take care. And I did. A few months later, I saw a photo online, Yemi, standing in front of a room full of students, gesturing passionately as he spoke. His caption read, "Greater than, healing is a journey. And sometimes, the hardest part is forgiving yourself." I smiled, not because I was part of his story, but because I had witnessed it. The rise, the fall, and the quiet rebuilding. Funke and Yemi weren't the couple that made it. But that didn't mean their love was meaningless. It had left its mark, not as a regret, but as a lesson. And me, I carried that lesson with me. That even the most painful endings can lead to new beginnings. That people are allowed to grow, to change, and to find joy again. Because sometimes, the most beautiful part of a story isn't the way it begins or how it ends. It's the way it continues. Life has a strange way of making us revisit the things we think we've moved on from. A couple of years after that cafe encounter, I found myself thinking about Yemi and Funke again. It wasn't because of some dramatic event, just one of those reflective evenings when the city finally quiets down, and memories slip through the cracks. By then, I had settled comfortably into my career. My days were filled with reports, deadlines, and endless traffic jams. Relationships came and went, none of them quite sticking. Lagos had a way of making love feel fleeting. But even so, I found myself holding on to the lessons that Yemi and Funke left behind. They taught me how love could be both a beautiful beginning and a necessary ending. That even when things fall apart, it doesn't mean they weren't worth something. I sometimes wondered if they ever thought about me, the silent witness to their story. Maybe not. Maybe I was just a side character in their narrative. But they were a significant part of mine. One morning, as I sifted through work emails, I spotted a name I hadn't seen in a while. Subject: Mental Health Awareness Week Guest Speaker Invitation. It was from Yemi's organization. Not from him directly, but from a coordinator who introduced herself warmly. Greater than, we would be honored to have you speak at our upcoming Mental Health Awareness Week event. Yemi recommended you highly, and we believe your perspective would be incredibly valuable. I stared at the screen for a moment, processing. Yemi recommended me. I hadn't expected that. But then again, he always did believe in people, even when they didn't believe in themselves. I replied with a simple yes. The auditorium was packed. Students, professionals, and people from all walks of life had gathered, eager to listen and share. I sat through the first few sessions, listening to stories of resilience and growth. Each one was a reminder that pain doesn't get the final say. When it was my turn, I took a deep breath and walked to the podium. I'm not a therapist, I began, but I've seen what mental health struggles can do. I've seen how they can twist the most beautiful parts of us into something unrecognizable. I didn't mention Yemi or Funke by name. Their story wasn't mine to tell in detail. But I spoke about how love, when mixed with unhealed wounds, can become something neither person recognizes. And how, sometimes, the bravest thing we can do is walk away, for ourselves and for the people we once loved. When I finished, the applause was steady but gentle. Not the loud, roaring kind, but the type that carries understanding. Afterward, as people mingled and shared their thoughts, I felt a hand on my shoulder. "Yemi, you were amazing," he said. I smiled. "Thank you for recommending me. You deserved it," he replied simply. We stood there, the hum of conversation filling the space. And for the first time, I realized we had both truly moved on. Not just from each other's memories, but from the weight they once carried. Before we parted, I asked him the question I'd been holding back. "Do you ever regret it? Everything that happened?" He shook his head slowly. "No, I think we loved each other the best we could. And sometimes that has to be enough." I nodded, because he was right. Take care of yourself, hear me. You too, busy. And that was it. No dramatic farewells. No promises to stay in touch. Just two people who had once shared a chapter and were now turning pages in their own stories. I haven't been back to campus in a while. But sometimes, when I close my eyes, I still see the mango tree. Its branches swaying in the breeze, its roots planted firmly in the soil. I think about how many stories it has witnessed since ours. New laughter, new whispers, new heartbreaks. And I like to think that maybe it remembers us too. Not with sorrow, but with a quiet understanding. Because even the trees know, some loves are not meant to last forever. But the lessons they leave behind, those stay with us, always.